Hello again, Chris Lee, Blake Lovell, and Max Barr of Southeastern 16 here to do SEC basketball predictions. In this video, we will talk about Vanderbilt going to Alabama, Mississippi State traveling to Tennessee, and Missouri heading to Austin, Texas. We will start in the order of tip-off, and also the order these games are listed on ESPN. That means we will start with Vanderbilt traveling to the Coleman Coliseum, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You can catch that 6 Central on the SEC network. Alabama lost last time it played in Coleman Coliseum. That doesn't happen a lot. Alabama also won last time out, very impressively, in Lexington. Vanderbilt also pulled the biggest upset the Commodores have pulled in a while, beating Tennessee in Nashville. Ken Pom has got this as Alabama by 12. I would imagine the line will be somewhat close to that, Max. Start us off with your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, probably a double-digit spread here. First thing that's jumping off the page right away to me is when we're looking at this matchup, Vanderbilt's ability or lack thereof to guard the three-point line. The past 3 games, opponents have shot north of 40% from 3 against Vanderbilt. You want to take that back one more game, over 37% from 3. 3 straight games letting up north of 40. If that happens against this Alabama team, who over the past 5 games shooting 34.5% from 3, that's about a full 2 points higher than their season average. So they're starting to get those threes falling. If that trend continues, it'll be a long night for the Commodores.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama, as we said, sort of figured some things out on Saturday against Kentucky. Probably not too big of a surprise, but this is one where, it's the formula for Vanderbilt. Like, they've got to take care of the ball. They got to force some turnovers. You can't let Alabama just do what they want. But you know what? There's another team that takes care of the ball and forces turnovers that just had success in Tuscaloosa. And so I think seeing if that theme can continue, as you guys have mentioned, is the big storyline for me, with Ole Miss kind of working some of that magic last week. So, yeah, I'm kind of looking at the same thing here.
Yeah, when games are double-digit spreads, we spend a lot of time focusing on, okay, if this one is close or someone pulls an upset, what does that look like? I look at a couple of things that are interesting here. Both teams like to play fast offensively. Vanderbilt, number 31 in the country in possession link on offense. Alabama, 7. Defensively, very different story, although there's only a second and a half in terms of time here. So maybe this is overrated. Alabama, the 36th fastest tempo on defense, according to Ken Pom. Vandy, 329. So, once they get you in a half court, they will try to grind you down and do a decent job of that. Ball handling, you mentioned that, Blake. Vanderbilt got a bunch of guards. They just don't turn it over very much. Alabama's MO on defense is not to force turnovers. And offensively, if you've got a flaw with Alabama outside three-point shooting, they turn it over a little bit more than you would think with all the talent at guard. They are 138th in the country at turning it over. Vanderbilt 8th in the country at forcing turnovers. And by the way, just upset Tennessee in small part because of the turnover issue. So to me, that's the interesting part is, are the threes falling for either side? And does Vanderbilt get some extra possessions? I think the tempo thing, Alabama is almost just tempo proof. They play at a high rate of tempo no matter who they face. So I think you can probably throw that one out. But anyway, those are some interesting things that I'm watching, Max.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting how these two teams depth-wise clash, because it's two teams that rank top 50 in the nation at bench minutes. Very, very similar splits in terms of starting minutes and bench minutes. However, it's completely skewed to the backcourt for Vanderbilt and then to the front court for Alabama. Tons of depth with the bigs for Alabama, not so much for Vanderbilt. Flip that. Vanderbilt is going to be just rotating those guards, making life difficult for Sears and whoever's bringing the ball up for Alabama. They're going to be fresh the entire game, whereas Alabama's got to lean on their guards a little bit more. And then the other part of the matchup that I was looking at was Alabama is 10th nationally in opponent assist rate and keeping that low. So they allow the 10th fewest team assists. That forces you into isolation style ball, that's something where I think like Jason Edwards, it might have to be a
Yeah.
game where he really starts to create for himself and they lean on some of that individual ability. Looking at that, guys, also.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, for me, it's also like Jalen Carey continuing to play, like he did against Tennessee, and then Grant Nelson coming off of a great game against Kentucky. So I think, I think a lot of the focus will be on the guard play here, but still, just with those guys, coming off some pretty good performances, I'm curious just to see how they keep that momentum going as well. And I think the thing we talked about too with Alabama, and maybe it is especially the case in a game like this. Think about in our watch along on Saturday when we're watching Kentucky, Alabama, how many times, Max, did we say, man, even though Big Cliff didn't get attributed with a stat on that play, he affected that play. His length, the wingspan, he affected something that happened on that possession for Kentucky. And I think it's kind of the same thing here, although the difference is what? Vanderbilt's just simply not as big of a team. And so, is this one where that was all the talk? It was the size and all this for Vanderbilt coming in. But is this one of those games where you look up and you're like, man, yeah, Big Cliff was the difference maker here. He just did not let them get anything easy. And, again, is that something that stands out potentially, I think, for a team like this that is a little bit more spread out in terms of how they get their points. They can score in a variety of ways, but again, that 57.3% from two, I wonder about that in this game, knowing maybe just the big bodies and the overall kind of size that Alabama has in this one.
Picks, gentlemen.
Keep an eye out on the injury report. See how Millette and Darian Reed are doing. But I'm not going to be picking against a double-digit spread here, especially having that underdog be on the road, coming off of probably their best performance, and I don't know how long. I'm going to go Alabama here. I think the front court depth is too much. However, I think if a guy like Jason Edwards or even maybe Nickel are making some individual plays, that could kind of change the game plan defensively for Alabama. But I'm going Tide.
I see some similarities in roster construction between Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. If you squint a little bit, they're both teams that are heavy with veteran guards. They're not huge inside, although both of them do block shots at kind of a surprising rate. So there's that. But I think watching Alabama, defense is not where we put our attention, but you could see how Kentucky, even when it had cleanish looks inside, it's like the specter of Big Cliff was sort of in the back of your head. Is he looming behind me ready to swat my shot? I think when you watch Alabama, that's an element you've got to be aware of. And I think maybe one of the more important things too, I think the worst thing that could have happened to Vanderbilt in terms of catching Alabama off guard was what happened last week when Ole Miss came into Coleman and won in a spot nobody expected. I'm just going to guess Nate Oates has reminded them of this week. I think it would have been a little bit easier to sneak up and pull it up. And look, Vanderbilt is capable of doing that with its experienced guards. I just think it's a bad spot given what happened last week. So give me Alabama in this one.
Well, I don't have to remind Vanderbilt what happened the last time they played in this building. Everyone remembers what happened the last time they played in this building in 2023. It was 101-44, as we remember, in that one. Ooh. However, what's interesting, I like my series history. And if you just look at two teams and just no matter who's on the sideline, all this other stuff, just kind of those wild sort of statistical trends, right? If you take that game out of it, go back to the times these two teams have played in Tuscaloosa over the past 10 years or so. 2021, Alabama wins by 4. 2020, Alabama loses, or Vanderbilt wins by 8. 2019, Alabama wins by 7. 2017, Alabama wins by 3. 2015, Alabama wins by 8. 2014, Alabama wins by 5. And so you see, 2010, Alabama wins by 1. Or Vanderbilt wins by 1. Sorry, Vanderbilt won a couple of those games. I'm just pointing out the 2015 one Vanderbilt won by 8. But yes, you see, it's kind of weird with these two teams. 2008, an overtime game. 2006, an overtime game. 2004, 3-point game. it is wild, like how many close games these two teams have played in this building. Again, throughout all the different coaches and everybody who's been through there, they always seem to play close games except for that last one. But yeah, I can't pick against Alabama. Wouldn't be surprised if it's closer than people think here. Really wouldn't. But you know what I always say when I say that? I also wouldn't be surprised if Alabama comes out and looks like Alabama and just, can steamroll anyone. But yeah, I'm picking the Tide.
Next up, gentlemen, we got a food fight at the same time. Mississippi State goes to Knoxville inside the Food City Center to face the Vols. State won a home game, I believe, in overtime. I don't think about it. Over Ole Miss, huge emotional win. Tennessee also played a rivalry game. Theirs on the road, losing to Vanderbilt. I think this is a fascinating matchup, Max, because I did not expect Vanderbilt to get the physical edge over Tennessee that it had when those two teams played Saturday. Now, look, I think that will serve as a Rick Barnes gets your attention moment for Tennessee. But if a team can really get physical on you and drive the ball inside, it's this team from the wing. State can do that. It can bully ball you with Cam Matthews. Stylistic, I think this is a very interesting matchup.
Yeah, and Josh Hubbard, no question about it. He is in a slump, and he's going to be matched up against one of the best guard defenders in the nation. So things aren't going to get easier. However, they do have other options. Riley Kugel is starting to play with a lot more confidence. I really like what I'm seeing from Claudel Harris. Still no Kanye Clary. And guys, if there's ever a game, maybe an Ole Miss game also in Missouri, because there's a few different teams that are really forcing turnovers. But the way that Tennessee plays at home and kind of what that arena can do to you, I feel like not having Kanye Clary could maybe show up the most in a game like this against the Tennessee defense. So just right off the jump, what I'm going to be looking for right away is how is Hubbard, Harris, maybe a little bit of Matthews, whoever is bringing the ball up and kind of initiating the offense, how efficient are they early on? Are they coughing it up or are they handling the pressure? I'll be looking for that right away.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an interesting one because Mississippi State gets their momentum back after the overtime win against Ole Miss. Meanwhile, Tennessee's coming off of probably in their minds an inexcusable loss at Vanderbilt. We know, which was another kind of one of those coming off of what happened 11 days before at Florida. And so you're just kind of scratching your head a little bit. And we talked about it in the power rankings. Like, sure, I think I'm probably a little lower on the way Tennessee's playing right now. I thought even for stretches against Georgia. I mean, they had 20 points with a minute to go in the first half in that game. And so I think the consistency has been lacking. But, again, if you do look at this from that standpoint, this is definitely one of those get your attention type moments that Chris mentioned with Rick Barnes, where you're coming off that loss, and now you're sitting here kind of in a position where, as we said, like this is a big spot for both of these teams just based on what the upcoming schedules look like. Tennessee gets, 4 of their next 5 at home, starting with this one. And so this is a big opportunity for Tennessee to put some things together. And if you're Mississippi State, it's like, well, the grind continues. And they managed to get one back against Ole Miss. They're 3-2 in the league. So I love the matchup here because you do have a Mississippi State team that, as we said, has changed some things offensively this year. Tennessee still doing great things defensively as of late, maybe a little bit more inconsistent offensively, but still two of the better teams in the league here.
Shall we get the picks?
Shall we? We shall. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting the way it plays out because we've seen usually Tennessee just absolutely takes care of business at home. But then you look at Mississippi State. They might need this one when you kind of look at their upcoming schedule and how they've got Alabama at home. They've got Florida at home. There's some big games coming up on the horizon for the Bulldogs. And I do not think they get this one. I'm going to go Tennessee here. Not confidently. I really don't like what I've seen the past few games out of Tennessee. Chris, I'm hoping it kind of plays into what you were saying with a Rick Barnes get focused type of thing. and maybe we see the defense snap back into it. So not confidently picking the Vols here.
Yeah, I mean, I look on paper, and Tennessee's all on-ball defense with Ziegler is obviously just elite. I mean, there's few guys, and Meshack too. I mean, those guys are just a headache. And this is a game where, again, I think State misses Kanye Clary more than you would think. And the stat sheet doesn't really show it, but when I watch them with my eyes at times, it does show. I think a second ball handler missing in this game is really, really big. And again, I think it's the spot. I really was thinking about picking State here, but I think the spot. Tennessee coming into a game where they've not played well in 2 weeks. They're coming back home where last time they were there, they beat Georgia by 18 points, controlled the second half. I was in Rick Barnes' press conference here. They were not pleased. I think any attention getting that he needs following the Vanderbilt game will happen. I think this is a tough matchup. On a neutral floor right now, I might even take State without Clary, but it's not there. It's in Knoxville. It just feels to me like I'm not going to say a stretch for Mississippi State to win because I can see it, but I just can't go there if you're forcing my hand. So give me the Vols.
Well, if you just look at the conference stats from the conference game so far for both of these teams, right? Tennessee is 13th in the SEC in effective field goal percentage, 12th in turnover percentage. They are 16th last in two-point percentage. They're shooting 43.3% from two right now in SEC play. The good news is they're the best offensive rebounding team in SEC play. So they're getting some of these misses and converting them into easy baskets. Also, what's wild to me, although it probably makes sense with Chas Lanier, they're getting 36.8% of their points from three right now, which is third in the SEC for teams. Meanwhile, Mississippi State is number one in two-point percentage. They're shooting 57.5% from two right now in SEC play. I think the offensive rebounding numbers, Tennessee has allowed offensive rebounds, and I think that is something for Mississippi State. If they're able to get a few Cam Matthews, Keyshawn Murphy, those kind of things I think would be significant here. I don't like the way Tennessee's playing necessarily either, but I'm also not picking against Tennessee at home until I see them lose a game. I'm just going to I'll just go ahead and give you a spoiler alert on all my picks maybe the rest of the way here. I'm just not picking against them at home. It's a different team, and especially coming off a loss, I think it sets up nicely. So give me the Vols at home.
Missouri travels to Texas, 8 Central on the SEC Network in the Moody Center. Missouri playing about as well as anybody in the conference. Huge upset last week over Florida, and then the Tigers come home and wreck Arkansas in a game that really wasn't a game from the jump. On the other hand, you got Texas, which, boy, that they flashed some things. Go to Oklahoma win, coming on the heels of nearly beating Tennessee and Austin. And then they go to Florida and just get drilled. We've noted many times we think Texas is a talented team, but not a lot of wins to show for it, Max Barr.
Yeah, you can be talented. A lot of teams are talented now. Got to win games. This is a big one for Texas. This is a real big one because when you look at their upcoming schedule, they will probably be favored by a point in this one. If not, pick them, whatever way you want to call it. But then after that, you're looking at maybe being favored in only 1-2 games in February, maybe. It's going to be a lot of underdog stuff for Texas in the pregames. So when you're looking at this matchup and how do they take advantage of a Missouri team that's on fire when you guys just got crushed by 24 on the road, it's got to be a lot like we just said in the last preview. You got to focus up. Texas in the non-conference had a really good defense. Well, through 5 games, they're ranking 15th in the SEC, only in front of Kentucky in SEC defense right now. So I think this is a big time, focus up, snap into it game for Texas. And it's going to be tough to do against the Missouri team here.
Yeah, and meanwhile, they're playing the team that's second in the SEC in conference play in three-point percentage, shooting 41.1% from three, getting 39% of their points from three. So they're taking advantage of it, which we know Caleb Grill has had a nice hand in that. And so that would worry me a little bit if I'm Texas. Remember, this is the first time these two teams have played in 13 years. They've not played since 2012. So a return to Big 12 form here for these two. But, yeah, I mean, Max brings up some good points about kind of the way things are trending for Texas. I think this is certainly a game where if you're talking about who needs this with more, there's no doubt about it. Texas absolutely needs this game way more than Missouri does. Not to say that Missouri's going to take it lightly, but we've seen some teams be in this scenario this year where their back's kind of against the wall, have to get out with a win, and maybe they've been able to do that. Will that be the case for Texas here? I think it's an interesting matchup because, we know Trey Johnson can go off at any time. We know Arthur Kaluma has gone off. Meanwhile, on the other side, Caleb Grill can go off at any time. We've seen Mark Mitchell do it. Anthony Robinson, keep going, right? So you got a lot of spurt ability in this game, perhaps. A lot of spurt ability in this one.
All right, when I look at these, I look at where like the green and the red meet on the KenPom profile sheets, and the only place those really stick out is free throw defense, which isn't even a thing. Missouri has given up an
you got to get better at your free throw defense.
I know. I mean, how good would Missouri be if teams didn't shoot lights out against them? And same thing with Texas. Texas is getting gifted with a lot of poor free throw shooting performances against Texas, so that might have something to do with the schedule. Interestingly enough, you look at Texas's KenPom profile. There's not anything that they're just awful at, but I don't know. It just hasn't translated so far against big teams. I think the thing that we pointed to is the 3-point percentage for the Longhorns is really good. You guys pointed out a couple of games ago. You guys thought that was a scheduling fluke. So far, it feels like you were right about that. But on the other hand, Texas has got Trey Johnson. It's got Arthur Kaluma. Both have had big scoring games. I think if we're going to see an upset in KenPom, I think it's got Missouri by 2 in this one. The path would seem to include that, Max.
I think he has Texas by 2 in this one.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, close game either way. I'll double check that.
I'm ready for pick.
You're right. Texas by 2. So the analytical models are favoring the Longhorns. The question is, do we?
Ready for picks?
Nice.
Sure.
All right. This one is tough. This is the hardest pick of the day. Definitely the hardest pick of the day. And when you look at you dig deep into the matchup, and you're like, okay, Missouri's second in the conference right now in SEC 3-point percentage. They're first in point distribution for threes. They're getting 39% of their total points from threes. That's the highest in the league right now. Texas defensively is 14th in opponent 3-point, the distribution. They're not letting teams score a lot of their points from 3. So I tip that perimeter matchup. I probably think Missouri's not going to be shooting north of 40% every single game. And this is a Texas team that hasn't been letting teams get a lot of their points from 3. So what does that turn the game into? That turns the game into a free throw battle, a turnover battle. Who wins that game? I think Missouri wins that game. Not however. I'm going Missouri on the road. Everything points me to take Texas in this game, that Missouri's not going to keep their hot shooting, that Texas will be able to, kind of muck it up at home. But even then, if Missouri's not making their shots and it turns into an inside game, I think Missouri wins the inside game too. So I'm going Missouri.
Yeah, home whistle this just in can be a big factor in SEC ball games. That said, Missouri has got about as many guys who can play as anybody in this league. Like they can bring guys off the bench that have barely played all year. They can come off the bench and give them things. We saw Missouri. We saw Missouri tested at Florida in the game. Nobody thought Missouri would win. They did. I mean, this is a toss-up. I need to see Texas win a game like this before I can go Texas. So we are going to put my man Blake in a bind, because that's the fun of this too, isn't it, Max? Give me the Tigers.
Boy, this may be the biggest bind you've put me in all season. Because on the one hand, if I don't pick Missouri, it's going to be on Twitter in a video after this game when they win. And once again, Chris is going to be painted as the Dennis Gates guru, which is simply not
Chris.
true. So I think Chris is just looking for the Twitter plays at this point. He doesn't care about his picks. He's just trying to get on the Missouri social media account. On the other hand, if I pick Missouri and the Southeastern 16 Kiss of Death decides to take aim at the Tigers because they get somebody every single game slate, they get somebody. We've already got 2 here. Alabama over Vanderbilt, Tennessee over Mississippi State. It's going to get somebody. And then I have to think about our pick'em contest, which currently I trail Max Barr by a single game. Yes. If I pick Texas and Texas pulls, will it be an upset or will Texas be favored here? I think there's a chance Texas is favored, so it may not even be an upset.
It might not even be.
Texas has lost by 5 at home to Auburn, 4 at home to Tennessee. They have been right there at home in these games. Their back is against the wall. This is a must-win, I think, for the Longhorns. You certainly don't want to be going into the rematch against a team you lost by 22 on Saturday at 1-5 in SEC play. They've got to win this one. They have to. And if they're going to do it, they're going to do it with a Southeastern 16 Kiss of Death because give me the Tigers of Missouri.
Oh,
Missouri fans, just remember, we all picked you against Arkansas. It worked out fine, okay? So don't tell me that all of a sudden, no. You tell me I don't believe in your team when I don't pick you. When I do pick you and we all 3 pick you and then I can't pick you. What can I do around here? I'm with you guys. I need to see Texas win one of these. Missouri has been battle-tested. I think it's a tough spot, though. I think it's a tough spot.
It is a tough spot.
I also thought it was a tough spot at Florida. So
Missouri is so screwed.
Well, we all picked Alabama. We all picked Tennessee. We all picked Missouri. So if you want to put some odds on it that at least one of these teams gets the kiss of death, I'd place them pretty high. Someone's going down.
Yeah.
Somebody's probably going down.
If we're wrong, I think it's this game.
Well, because we're all 3 picking the underdog, probably.
Yeah.
Like, when do we ever do that? Has there ever been a game this season where we've all 3 picked the underdog? I don't think so.
Probably.
Well, every time we try to see what games are going to definitely avoid the kiss of death, and we say, well, it'll probably be Missouri. You know, that looks like it'll be the culprit. It's definitely
somebody
one of the
else.
other. Yep.
That's true. Like, did we spend any time last week talking about Florida losing at home or Alabama losing at home?
Neither.
No.
But what do we think the number? Like, it can't be higher than 1 or 2, right? If Texas is favored. Because as you said, Ken Palm has this as Texas 2-point favorite. And the lines usually come close to that when they open. So I think they'll be favored.
I think
probably,
Texas will be
Missouri's
favored.
top
I do
25.
too.
Bart Torvik has it Texas -1.
Yeah, so probably it's going to be 1 or 2.
They'll be like -1.5 to open.
Yeah.
I want to see. I think. Gosh, where's Missouri? BPI has Texas higher than Missouri. Bart Torvik has got Missouri on a neutral floor higher than Texas. Evan Mai's got Missouri on a neutral floor rated above Texas, and same thing with Ken Palm.
I think
so.
the
It's
number
just
has
BPI
to
that's the outlier.
Has to factor in how close Texas has come against Auburn and Tennessee.
Well, sure it does.
Yeah.
So. That's what predictive metrics do. It's not did you win or like a 1-point win and a 1-point loss are almost the same thing.
All right.
So.
Can't wait.
All right. To whoever we gave the kiss of death, you are welcome.
Good luck.
We'll be back to take our lumps along with you on our reaction, which I presume we'll do Tuesday night because we always do one of those. So, for Max Barr and Blake Lovell, hope you'll tune in. Best way to do that is hit the subscribe button. That's free. And enable your notifications. That is also free so you know when we come with more content. God bless you. Have a great evening of basketball watching on Tuesday. We'll see you again soon with more SEC basketball content here at Southeastern 16.